from the SheShed France. Today, as you can see, I'm in the garden. I'm Zena and I'm the face of From the SheShed France. So if you're new here, that's who I am, and if you've been before, that's great, welcome back. Today I'm going to be upcycling some tables. If you've been before, you'll have seen these tables. I picked them up in a charity or thrift shop for €5, which is just over, I think, $5, just under £5, depending where you are in the world. And so today I'm going to be showing you the processes for upcycling these tables. Okay, so the process goes through a number of stages, and I will put all of this in the description box below. One of the reasons I've come outside is the first part of this job is fairly dirty, so if you can do it outside, I would recommend you do so. Particularly given that I've got sugar soap here, which is toxic, so you shouldn't really be inhaling it. And you'll see I'm wearing some disposable gloves. I think one of my cats is about to jump into the photo. I'm wearing disposable gloves because it's an irritant. And then I've got my sander and some sanding paper. And at this stage, I'm going to start by giving all three tables a really good wash with the sugar soap. I saw on another channel once, the reason that you wash first is that if you sand first, any grease that's on the surface of your wood will be driven into the grain rather than getting rid of it. So I'm going to make a start now. I've got really quite hot water, which is another reason for having the gloves on, and I'm going to be fairly liberal in this first stage of washing these tables, and I will be washing all three, washing their legs thoroughly, because obviously I'm going to paint the whole of the table. Okay, I've now given these tables a really thorough wash. One of the things you need to remember is that they have got turned legs, so you need to get into those grooves and really give them a clean. I'm not going to be painting underneath, but I have still sugar soaked that. I just want everything to be as clean as is possible. And the next thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to start sanding my tables. I'm lucky enough to own a mouse sander. I love it. And it's very strange, but it brings me deep joy. I will be using that to start with, and then as I carry on I should just use some ordinary sandpaper because obviously I can't get into the grooves with this. So excuse the noise, but I'm going to make a start. I'll show you this before I go and change it, because for my second lot of sugar soaping I will change the water, but if you have a look you can see how black that water is, and that you wouldn't have thought that those tables looked particularly dirty, but you can see that they obviously were, and I'm now going to go and get myself a fresh set of sugar soap. So I've actually finished sanding the tables now. I've got myself some clean water, hopefully you can see that, and I'm adding my sugar soap again. And I'm going to do a second wash now. After that I should be able to go inside, which I'm rather looking forward to because as you probably know, I live in rural Brittany, and at the moment it's trying to rain on me. It keeps drizzling on and off. The other thing I should mention at this stage, because my husband is a health and safety freak and keeps reminding me that I haven't said anything. If you're doing this indoors, do make sure you've got a dust mask, because what comes off old furniture can be quite nasty. I'm okay because I'm in the outdoors, plenty of fresh air, nice actually being able to work outside. I paint outside sometimes, but I'm not going to today. So just remember that if you're doing it inside, do make sure you've got a dust mask to protect yourself. As you can see, I'm really getting into all of the grooves again. I know I've done it once, but we'll have dust in there now from the sanding process. And if we want this to work really well and we want this to adhere, we need to make sure that the the table is really clean so that the paint can stick to it. Well, I'm really quite pleased that we've come inside now because you can possibly hear the wind. It's really starting to blow and it is raining. Rural Brittany, we say you can get 4 seasons in one day, and at the moment it's stormy season. I'm about to start painting now, and there's some things I want to say before I start. One of the things you can't help but see is that I have French sheet paint. I'm not sponsored by them in any shape or form. I have found that I find them to be the best paints for upcycling with. And I also really like their brushes. Now, this one is not looking in the best of conditions because I did, I think, one time forget to wash it when I should have done. But I've had this brush 3 or 4 years at least. It's done a lot of projects in that time, and it doesn't lose hairs. It works really well. So although those brushes are a bit more expensive to start with, I think they're brilliant. You will need to find what works for you. The other thing I need to say at this stage is that I'm not a professional furniture restorer. However, I have upcycled and sold in the past, so it's not as though I don't know anything about what I'm doing. But one of the things I think that is really important about what I'm doing is about how good this is for mindfulness and for flourishing. We're taking things that really were destined for the tip or for landfill, and we're reusing them and we're upcycling them. They're going to make them into something beautiful that we can use in our homes. So I'm going to make a start now. I have chosen the French Chic Duckling, which is a kind of grey blue. What I would say is only a very tiny bit on the tip of your brush to start with, and really work it into the grain, work it into the wood. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time now putting my first coat all over all 3 of my tables, and I'm going to come back to you when all 3 have been painted. So the first coat has now dried on these tables. In fact, that one's slightly tacky, so I'm not going to work on that one yet, but I will be working on this one. It's a couple of things I want to say is that after I put the first coat on, I thoroughly washed my brushes and dried them. I know some people will leave brushes damp between coats. Actually, I don't think it's very good for your brush, and I think if you want to really look after them, you need to be doing that. So you can see that these are really clean, really dry now, so I'll be ready to use them in a moment. The next thing I'm going to do is to actually very lightly sand. My father-in-law was a carpenter and joiner, and he made a lot of bespoke furniture in his lifetime, and obviously did up bespoke furniture, and he was always insisting that between coats you should be doing a light sand. So this is a 600 grade sandpaper, which means it's one of the finest that exist. And what I should be doing is very lightly sanding like this, just in little circular motions across my table, and then with a clean dry brush just giving it a bit of a sweep to make sure that comes away. And then when I've done all of that, I'll put a little bit of a damp cloth over it before I put on my next coat. I'm now painting the 3rd table with its 2nd coat. I'm really pleased with how well the paint is taking and how smooth it looks. Do try and paint with the grain, that way you get a smoother finish. The paint actually goes in and doesn't cause ridges on your work. When I finish this, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to be putting some stencils on the top of my table because I want to decorate them and make them look a bit interesting. I'm not trying to make it look as though I've made this table look perfect or back to how it was. I'm actually making it quite clear that I've upcycled it, I've painted it, and that I've done something with it that just makes it look a bit jolly. The 2nd coat of paint is now dry, and what I'm actually going to do to jolly up my tables is to add some stencils, and I've chosen 3 different stencils, and each table is going to have a different stencil on it. I'm going to start with this middle one, and I particularly like this stencil which says there's always time for tea. I'm going to use 2 colours on that, and there are some things that you need to think about. Firstly, you've got to be very careful when you're stenciling so that you don't actually go into the different areas. I can't easily take them off, so I have to just be very careful with what I'm doing. And the other thing that you must be aware of is that when you use more than one colour, or use the same stencil in more than one place, which is what I'm going to be doing over here. I've got some paw prints and I've got them at the bottom there, and I'm going to replicate them at the top. You must wash your stencil in between, otherwise you will smudge paint everywhere. So I actually already have a bowl of hot soapy water ready for putting my stencils into and washing them. So I'm going to make a start. Wish me luck. What you'll see is that I'm not putting very much paint on my brush, and I'm just very carefully stippling the paint into the stencil. And you'll find that I go a bit quiet because I'm concentrating. Nice when it's big areas because it's easier to do, but when you get down to the smaller bits you've got to be so careful. And here I'm coming up near the saucer, so again I've got to be careful. So now just the top part of this one. Just before I take that stencil off, I'm going to have a quick look at it. I think I've covered everything I need to cover, so I'm going to use my low tack tape as a way of taking my stencil off, she says. Ooh. And now the stencil is going to be washed before I use it again. You can see that I've already put the paw prints on the bottom part of this table. I've thoroughly washed and dried my stencil, and I'm now going to place it at the top here, which is where I want my second set of paw prints to be. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to tape that into position, so I'm just going to go back to my stippling brush and get my other set of paw prints. And there we go. Before you do the second colour, you've got to absolutely be sure that the first colour is dry. And I learned this trick a few years ago. I'll be a few minutes doing this, I'll come back to you in a second, but what you'll find is that I've also thoroughly washed and dried the stencil. The first colour is dry now, and I want to put on the second colour. Now this is where it gets tricky, because you've actually got to line your stencil back up. And so you've got to be very careful in doing that. You're never going to get it absolutely perfect, but I'm going to do the best I can. And I think, no, that's not quite right. I'm not happy with that. Oops. Let's see if I can move it just slightly. Oops. I think that's looking better now, and I'm just going to put a piece of tape on the bottom, because what I don't want is the stencil bagging too much, for want of a better word, because you don't want to end up with more paint going on than is absolutely necessary. So here we go, final colour now. And I've just gone for a very pale cream, just decided on this occasion I'm going to go for fairly subtle colours. So we'll see how this turns out. Try not to stencil what I've already done, which, believe you me, is a bit of a challenge. I need a bit more paint there. Nice when there's bigger areas and you don't have to worry so much. Oops. But when you're coming in close to letters that you've already done, you need to be careful. So I think, yep, I'm there. So I'm just going to take that stencil off. Give everything a chance to dry. I'm now at a stage where I'm going to put some finishing coat on the tops of my tables. Technically, I don't need it because of the paint that I have used. However, given that these are going to be used, and I have stenciled the top of them, I do like to put a final coat over the top in order to harden them and make sure that they stay nice and protected. And just before I carry on doing that, I'll just show you, I stenciled hairs onto this one. So each of the 3 tables, it's got a slightly different pattern, picture on it. I've used different colours, although all very muted. Possibly next time I do it a bit brighter, but on this occasion I felt like having something that was relatively muted. I'm hoping that you can see that this is a mindful or flourishing activity, taken something that might have actually ended up in landfill and now turned it into something that's really quite attractive and very useful. These will be going into our, well, we've got a kitchen, dining, living all in one, so they're going to go in there because at the moment we have no side tables. So when they've fully dried, that's where they're going. Do hope you've enjoyed today's video. Remember, if you have, please hit like, subscribe and ring the bell, and that way you'll get notified each time I upload. I look forward to talking to you again soon.